Welcome to the Poetry Oblivion podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Kenilworth Arts Festival and Pure Good and Right Poetry. Your host is John Watson. Poetry Oblivion was recorded and produced at Abbey End Studios, Kenilworth.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Poetic Oblivion. They've been quite stretched out. I started the first one quite a few months ago, recording them here in Kenilworth at the Kenilworth Centre. This is episode 3, and I'm really pleased that for this third episode I've managed to persuade one of my favourite poets, Andrea. I was calling her Andrea, wasn't I? Andrea Mbarushimana has come over to, and I can nail that, Mbarushimana. Took me a couple of goes to get that, but I'm pretty good at it now.
Impressive.
Yeah. I've got a few informal questions to ask. So hello and welcome to Andrea.
Hi, John.
Yeah. Here we are. It's a really warm day and we're hunkered into this little snug booth in the middle of the centre here, but it's all right. We're okay. So I'm going to ask Andrea a few questions about poetry. And I don't know if I forgot to say that the whole point of this podcast is to try and make poetry accessible to people who perhaps are nervous of poetry. I know lots of our family and friends, as soon as Kim and I mention we go to or run a poetry night, weirds them out, what's going on, and they don't know how to behave around it, because there's a lot of people intimidated about poetry. Even people who come for the first time, I find, are a little bit unnerved by it, and it has this kind of mystique which is maybe part of its magic. That's the sort of stuff we're going to discuss. You're right with all that then?
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Right, so I've got a list of questions. They're all really informal. So question number 1, here we go. What are your earliest memories of thinking that you like listening to reading and, of course, writing poetry, Andrea?
Oh, very, very little. So I had this book that my godfather got me for my birthday one year. Was it birthday or Christmas? I don't know. But I was very young, maybe like 5, 4. And it was called The Children's Treasury of Humour, and it had loads of nonsense verse in. So it had loads of Edward Lear and Spike Milligan and stuff like that. And I loved that book. And I loved like A.A. Milne as well. Yeah. All those poems. Sir John was not a good man. He had his wicked ways and nobody would speak to him for days and days and days. I still remember that. That Indian red rubber ball one, it touched my heart, that poem. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Naughty man who couldn't get a Christmas present and then he accidentally found one. That was adorable. Yeah. So I really liked poetry, and I kind of kept liking poetry. Look, I mean, kids really love rhyme and verse, don't they? Mm-hmm. Like all of Julian Donaldson's books are written in rhyme and they sell for a reason, Yeah. I think there's something ingrained about it. So it's like a tragedy when people lose that, I think, that enthusiasm.
So it's not just the mnemonic element of rhyme that helps you to remember stuff. It's joyful as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so listening to people read those poems, I guess, because you said listening specifically, not reading, which was interesting.
Reading, I was thinking about that. I was writing that. Reading poetry and listening are very different experiences, aren't they? Yeah. I'm going to come on to that actually, I think in a couple of questions along.
And then you asked about when I started writing.
Yeah,
myself.
That's question 2 that you've read upside down.
Oh, right, okay.
Is that a skill of yours?
I can't read your writing, actually. Yes, that's not what happened.
Well, let's hasten on to question 2.
Okay, let's go.
When did you first start writing your own pieces of poetry?
So at school, they would ask you to write poems, and then so I did, and I wrote poems outside of school, and I won a competition, or I was the runner-up in a competition for the RSPB. They ran a children's poetry competition.
I can remember that.
I wrote a poem about swans, I think, and I got to go to this event, and I was about in year 5 or 6 then, I think.
Wow. To have lots of S's.
Hey?
S's. Like the swans.
Yeah. The
assonance of the swan.
Stately swans.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the poem, and I would not, abuse your eardrums like that. But, so I just always wrote. And as a teenager, of course, I kept writing horrible, confessional, love poetry, deeply egotistical, that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And I won't talk about. I've talked about my poetic journey before, but I didn't start till quite a bit later, so I missed all that sort of I wanted to be that teenage gothy kind of Beat Generation poet smoking French cigarettes, but it just didn't happen, to be honest.
Just didn't happen.
I wanted it to be.
At the time, did you want it, or do you want it in
retrospect? I had friends
who
who went for that kind of Flauberry kind of big shirts and coolness, and they were much more into English than I was at school.
Yeah.
They were in a higher set. Lots of my friends were in a much higher set, and I was in a terrible set with the lads who couldn't read, but I was a huge reader. But yeah.
It's a mess, isn't it?
Yeah. I'd like 5 to a book, 4 or 5 to a book, reading Kes, and I'd read it before and just stare out the window while the others. It was terrible that I couldn't read.
That's quite soul-destroying, actually.
Yeah. Right, would you be able to? Do you fancy reading?
Sure.
Well, should we go with? I asked Andrea to suggest a couple of poems that she likes, and you said that you change all the time, don't you?
Yeah.
So Andrea sent over a couple of pieces. They're quite short. Do you want to read one of them, or do you want to read one of your own?
I can read one of them.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. The Rumi one is not very long at all, is it?
Okay.
Or who's the other one? I can't.
The other one is it's Paul Durkin.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for that. Okay. I just came across this book. I was like out, and there were books on a shelf. I think it was a coffee shop in town in Coventry.
Mm-hmm.
Am I allowed to name the coffee shop?
Go for it. Yeah.
Bean and Leaf. There, nice coffee. Anyway, they got this book, The Poetry Pharmacy, on the shelf. So I picked it up.
Is that a new bookshop in Coventry?
It's just a cafe.
Oh.
And I loved like all of the poems that I read in it, like a lot.
Mm.
So I don't know this poet or anything about them. But this is Maureen Durkin by Paul Durkin. A grain of sand. I'm blown onto a clump of heather. And I see a light large above me, a butterfly with black and orange stripes. It's Auntie Maureen, age 94, smiling down upon me. And she's saying, while you were sleeping, Paul, I died. Isn't it the most glorious morning?
That is lovely, isn't it? Yeah.
I love that.
Mm. Yeah, I sounds like somebody I'll have to explore and read a bit more of.
Yeah.
I love the way you read that, and this comes on to question 3. They're not really questions. It sounds really formal, making it questions. I was going to say that I really admire the way that you perform your work, and in the past, I've commented on your accent, asked if you have any kind of Bristol or. Do you remember me asking?
Yeah,
you that?
Devon. Yeah.
And I've realised that after hearing myself on these podcasts, that I have a similar
Yeah.
West Country
there
twang.
you go. You see.
And that it is probably part of our Coventry accent.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Which is, for anybody not from Coventry, is one of the hardest accents to nail in the country, I would say.
Yeah.
Brummie mates trying to do a Coventry is hilarious. Trying to do probably equally bad for us doing theirs. But I wanted to ask you have you had any performance training? Because you always seem very centred and calm when you read.
Oh, I don't feel centred and calm when I read.
When you look at
sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, actually. Sometimes I'm absolutely terrified. And but if I know the poem well and I've practised it or I've read it before, then I'll be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it helps having friendly faces in the audience.
It does. But what I find in a poetry reading audience, they're looking at you in a very strange manner. They're not expecting to laugh particularly.
Yeah.
And the more oblique your poetry is, the more when you look at them, they've got this kind of, what the hell is he on about face?
Next time I do a reading, I'm going to be looking out for that face.
I think they're sort of computing. When somebody reads a funny poem,
yeah.
They immediately get... And when you have slam poems, I'm a bit anti-slam poetry because... and I've had to judge them and run the nights. You have to make 3 people judges. And, of course, laughter is a really strong reaction.
Yeah.
And the funny ones always win.
Yeah, they do.
The ones who are really dark and, with lots of thought and content, they're not going to win. And the people, the watching face of taking in a poem like that is kind of inert. You don't know what's going on in there. Anyway, that's how I feel about...
in answer to your question, I used to perform on stage when I was a kid.
Ah.
Yeah, from when I was like 8 to 18, I was in a group that did musical theatre. And then at school, I did drama productions. So I think that definitely helped.
Mm. There's a thing with actors where they centre themselves. Have you heard of this?
No.
I'm not sure I've heard about it, where you just learn to centre yourself on stage. And I've something I need to explore. We had a couple of poets from Ireland last year, Cahill Holden and Rosalind Blue, and both were great. They were both good performers, but Cahill's got a very sort of measured and centred. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I do remember that performance.
Yeah, I meant to ask him about that, but I forgot completely.
They both do rap as well, though, don't they? So they perform a lot. They concentrate on performing.
Yeah, hand movements, everything. I haven't got any of that. Got any hand movements or?
If I don't have bits of paper in my hands, then I do move my hands. I move my hands while I'm talking quite a lot. I'm not today because I squashed up.
There were too many bits to knock over, aren't there?
Yeah, I'm worried about making random noises.
I like to step around a bit. Step around from one side to another of the stage.
Yeah, yeah.
I like to do that, and I did it it was in Ulster a couple of years ago, and a mutual friend, Wes, who's been on before, Wes got us to read some poetry. The night before, I'd had a dodgy oyster.
Oh God!
And I was fidgeting a bit while I was reading.
Oh. That definitely had an element to your performance.
Yeah, definitely did. Kim said you were moving around quite a lot, and I was a bit nervous. And then the musician who came on after did 5 encores. We had to sit there, and I really didn't want to be there.
Ooh.
Anyway, let's not get down that road because it flashbacks of
trauma.
Yeah. Right. So you've read that poem, haven't you? Should we have another poem? I mean, we can just intersperse this. Do you want to read one? I haven't really looked at any of the ones I've written of late.
Yeah, I don't mind reading one.
Yeah. I've got one there.
Okay, yeah. I've got one that was written for the residency that I did. So it's about epilepsy is the kind of subject it's about.
Yeah.
And it's called Big Bang. Since the EEG, my brainwaves infiltrate my thoughts. I imagine the activity up there, complex and fragile, the nest of ants I prodded into as a curious child. Still cranium of clay, hiding a pocket universe. Pheromone algorithms, playing their symphonies in dark chambers. But my higher brain messes up. Falls into a rhythm and becomes trapped in repetition. I'm lost. No personality, no memory, no volition. I never witness my body's struggle to keep going. Lizard, alone. I'm a shell. A TV screen on which no show is playing. Only the hiss and fuzz of background radiation. But after a while, from that white noise, like a miracle, a universe is born, all fire and energy. My open eyes.
Glorious. That's perfect. And beautifully read, as ever.
Thank you.
I've had a strange summer. Working up north around Nantwich. And I've got some poems, but I'm going to maybe... I'm not going to read that one. Oh yeah, I've been up in Crewe, working and staying in a shepherd's hut in a little farm. And it was a bit of a wet start to the spring, when I was first in the shepherd's hut. And they've got a selection of animals, and A little bit feral it is. So I ended up with a poem for the farmers that have been looking after me in this shepherd's hut, to be honest.
Oh.
It's called Nantwitch's Cats. Here we go. When it doesn't rain in Cheshire, all the cats, they seem to smile, stretched out in the sunlight, tendons, teeth, all furry fluff, paws, all claws, enwrapped in thought, slinky dreams of mice uncaught. Across the half-trod paths, the drovers' lanes, streets and stiles, stony bridges, mosses, meres, sun-trapped corners, sleepy farms, curled amongst the shafts of rays, curled out mogs, lost in feline, sleepy daisies. That's my little cat poem. And everyone else normally has got a cat poem. All poets. Have you got one? I had anxiety.
I don't think I have, actually.
Have you noticed that lots of poets have got a cat poem?
They do. I'm allergic to cats, and I do love cats, and I will stroke them if I've taken medication previously.
Yeah. I'm the same with dogs.
But maybe that's why I've not got a cat poem.
I've got the dog thing. Totally allergic to dogs.
Really?
Had our dog. Did you ever see our dog, the sheepdog? We had a beautiful sheepdog for years and years. And for 10 years I had a cold, and it was just...
You didn't know why?
Just a dog allergy. That. And now it's worse because he kind of...
Yeah.
I was got used to it, but if I stroke a dog now, it can really feels odd. Should we read the Rumi poem? Have you got that one to hand?
I'll find it on my
phone. It's such a
so
short poem.
Give me
it's
a sec.
Almost haiku length.
It's really short, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you not heard of Rumi, is like a 13th century poet from
Persia.
Yeah. And he was in Afghanistan for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. But his
isn't he almost a bit like a Robin Hood type character? Nobody knows exactly.
He travelled around a fair bit, I think. Yeah. Okay. Oh man, I need my reading glasses. I keep forgetting I need reading glasses.
Mine are off and on like mad. It's a nightmare.
A nightmare. This is called Your Task. It's attributed to Rumi, so we're just assuming it's him actually. And translator unknown. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it.
Yes, a salient thought, isn't it?
That's something to live by, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I read that the other night when you sent it, and I'm working with a guy he can be a bit intense. I don't know if he's gonna, he might even listen to this. He knows who he is. And I was going to read it the other day, but the moment was wrong. He would have thought I'd have been commenting on him too closely.
Oh.
But I thought there's a lot of good life advice in there for all of us.
Yeah.
So they're really nice, two nicely pared down and precise pieces of poetry. Are you yourself reductive? Do you edit a lot?
Oh yeah, I do edit a lot. There's maybe 2 poems in my entire life that have just come out like fully formed, and I've not edited them. Yeah, I love editing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a couple of films once, and I really loved editing films as well.
Wow.
I really like it.
I find it.
Chop it down.
I find it really hard because usually there's a nugget in the thought of the strain of, like, what do you call it, free writing.
Yeah.
There's some kind of nugget of truth in that.
Yeah.
That you've stumbled on. That's why you've thought to write about it.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to get to.
When I try and edit, I usually find there's a term for this, where you see if you take something out at the beginning, there was a reference to it at the end, and if you take that out, it's really hard to do this.
Okay.
If you remove that influence at the beginning, I'm not going to go on this train of thought. It's really
there is advice that says if you can cut the first bit and the last bit, then cut them. But I don't, I don't use that when I'm editing. It is more of an instinctive thing. I think, like it's not as instinctive as the first draft, but it's still. what interests me about editing, I think, is that you can write something and then there can be more than one truth in it, and you can discover other truths in it as you're editing.
Yeah.
So the poem can like go in more than one direction, and then you kind of have to decide. And sometimes you even realise it's more than one poem, you know, or yeah. I like that kind of. There's a quality of like discovery there, or like fossil hunting. I like fossil hunting. Yeah.
There's things that are really hard to write about. I find things like water. Water is meant to be quite hard to paint.
Yeah.
Although it seems to be quite easy to animate. You've seen games with water in them, films with. Seems to write about water is quite hard. I've just read a book about a guy writing about sailing around from Cornwall up to the west coast of Ireland and up to the islands of Scotland, and he writes about water beautifully in the different so I've always found that hard. Certain creatures are really hard to paint and write about, because otters I find ridiculously hard to draw. People sculpt them, don't they? There's lots of sculptures.
Yeah, I've sculpted an otter.
Yeah, have you?
For a clock, yeah. There's some clocks somewhere. With it, like, yeah, there was a team of us. It was fun. Otters.
Tricky. I find them really tricky, and I love them. And I saw one. I've told you I saw one in Warwickshire.
I'm very jealous because
It was on
I saw otters in
frosty
Scotland,
morning.
but I've not seen them.
It was hunting for crayfish next to the cemetery where I worked.
Wow.
It was beautiful, huge as well. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Anyway, we've meandered nicely there. I've come to question 5. These podcasts, right, were inspired by my own introduction to poetry in later life, in my early 40s, by my love of the culture novels of Ian M. Banks, and you yourself are a culture novel series fan, as I remember. Do you remember them well?
I remember some of them. I remember Use of Weapons has poetry in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Dizzy Smar, was it? She wrote poems.
Yeah, Smar, yeah. The names are fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't remember some of the other novels in that much detail, but yeah.
Well, I can remember. Have you read Consider Phlebas?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was obviously, that's one of, I think it's the first of the cult, and it's probably the book I've read most by him. And the main protagonist in the start of Consider Phlebas is found floating in space.
Yeah. From
some kind of explosion of a ship or something, and he's waiting to die, and he's picked up by a group of brigands. Can you remember that bit?
Yeah, just about.
I was going to say, I watched Mastermind ages ago, and the guy who won had actually previously won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He was a real clever bloke, and he won Mastermind, and his specialist chosen subject was the culture novels of Ian M. Banks.
That's a great subject.
Yeah. And I watched it avidly, and I did match his perfect score on the specialist.
Oh.
I got all Ian M. Banks. I felt really geekily chuffed by that.
Yeah, well done. I'm impressed.
So it was Ian M. Banks writing about stealing bits of lines from The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot.
Yeah.
That got me into poetry. I don't know why I've meandered off onto that one, but I guess it was just like influences.
Yeah, and you can find poetry like in all sorts of weird places, can't you?
I was gonna that actually segued into question 6, which is
go.
a non-poetry question to you. Have you finished your own science fiction book? My book was like a urban fantasy thriller. The one with the sexy vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd finished that, and I just didn't think the story was strong enough, so I'm kind of writing a new book now with some of the same characters in the same world. But I've changed the story, and I've got a couple of new characters, and I've focused with one of the kind of secondary characters in the first novel is now one of the main characters, because I just preferred writing about her. She was more fun. Yeah, my protagonist was a bit boring. I felt.
The male one,
no, the female one. So, so yeah, I'm enjoying writing. Well, yeah.
You are.
I kind of give myself the summer off because everyone's at home and it's really hard.
Yeah.
To focus. So I can write poems in the summer, but I can't write long form fiction.
To write anything, I had a few months off. I can't remember when. Over a year ago, to write about my time at the burial ground.
Yeah.
I had 4 months off and ended up with a piece that I'm trying to punt out.
What's happened to your plays though?
That's it. That's it. It's got interest.
Yeah.
Producers want to read it, but I'm struggling to find an agent. as a major producer wants to read it. I've established a friendship with her, but she can't read it until I've got an agent. So that's my stumbling point at the minute. But yeah, you do need to remove yourself from the noise of the world to write a chunk. I find trying to write something otherwise I can't imagine how people can do it. I was going to ask, where can I buy a copy of that book? But you've gone back. You've gone back. You've taken it back on board, haven't you?
But I've got a short story in an anthology that your daughter's in.
That's right. Yeah, that's coming up soon, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Remember the date?
Soon.
Can we plug that?
Oh, gosh.
Doesn't matter.
Is it the 26th of September?
I can't remember.
Holly,
she's coming down in a few weeks for it.
Yeah. I need another copy of her book, actually, her little book, because I love it so much. And then I gave my copy to my friend's daughter because I thought she'd really like it, and she did really like it.
Did she? Is that Never Seen the Sea? Was it? Yeah.
It was so funny. I loved that.
Yeah. No, she's great. Yeah, she's coming down for that. There's quite a few. It's going to be quite good, that. We should have had that. We should know when that is. If you can search for it. I'll sort of meander around the start of question 7, which isn't really... I was just going to ask you about influences of your own poets. Or actually not poetic, maybe literary or personal influences in your life that encouraged you to, nudged you in this direction. Or was it all yourself?
Oh, well, yeah, there's no poets in my family. Although my dad wrote a poem, but my granddad wrote short stories. I just, I never had, like, people talk on, like, Twitter and stuff about, like, really influential English teachers and things like that. Yeah. I never had anyone like that. I never had, like, a mentor when I was younger. But then I did, like, maths and physics and English A-level and totally flunked maths and physics because I guess, decided I didn't want them. So I did an English degree, and then as part of that I did contemporary literature and also some creative writing, and found lots of poets then that were very influential to me, and they got really good poets in to do readings for us as well. Yeah, like Mimi Calvati came, and Jeff Hattersley came. Like, yeah, both amazing poets.
I met a guy at a philosophy weekend I went to in Devon quite a few years ago, and he was an English teacher at a private school, Stowe. It's quite a famous private school. And he was saying how the education that the kids get, they get the latest poets, rappers, delivered to the school, fated, paid well, fed, watered. They sleep there. They spend the night there. Yeah. They engage with it.
That was it. It was the conversations in the pub afterwards that were really, inspirational. That made you think, oh yeah, these are lovely people. They're just like normal human beings. If they can do it, maybe I can do it.
We didn't have we had nothing like that. We had, as I say, it was like 4 kids around a book, and then they glossed over the bare minimum of poetry because they knew that the attention span of the group wouldn't perhaps take that.
The only poem I remember doing at secondary school, the whole of secondary school, I remember one poem, and that was, I remember 2, but the other one I didn't like, and it was the Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah, Coleridge. I remember friends talking about that,
and I like that poem.
And liking the idea of it.
Yeah, I like the idea of it.
It's got the whole scary big empty sea as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Anything with that in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember any poetry from school whatsoever. Just. That's
sad, isn't it?
Yeah, just like bleakly.
Well, my daughter looked into doing English Lit A-level, and all of the texts were like, dead white men, like all of them. Like it was awful, and it's like an inner city secondary school. And
you're on about now, aren't you?
Yeah,
your daughter
I'm on
now.
about like literally, yeah. This year, and I said to the English teachers, "What is going on here?" And they're like, "Well, it's the syllabus," but I know that's not right. You know, the syllabus does have people on it. I know it's got people. It's got like recent poets, like, you know, I think John McCulloch's on the syllabus.
Yeah.
I think. But I don't know. Generations like seem to move so fast as well these days. It's kind of hard to. You know, even Carol Ann Duffy is like, you know, kind of sounds dated to my daughter. And that's, you know, not that long ago. And she's still writing, obviously.
Have you found the plug for your...
I have, and it was the 26th of September. So it's the Book of Coventry, edited by Rafe Boylan, published by Comma Press. And there's the launch event is at Common Ground on the 26th of September at 7 p.m. And you can get tickets from Comma Press.
Where's Common Ground?
Common Ground is Fargo Village. You know where the Big Comfy Bookshop used to be?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there.
Oh, the record. It's a record shop now.
It's not in that shop. It's round the corner from there, but it's in.
Oh, I know it.
It's
I
in
know
Fargo
it.
Village.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, so it's like an anthology of like fiction based in Coventry. Like some of it's about Coventry, but some of it's not. But it's based in Coventry, and it's by like local writers.
Yeah.
Some really good writers.
Yeah. The local, our famous Andrew Davis.
Yeah.
Is in there as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Another question, and then we'll go with this. Question 8. This is: have you any idea where you would like your poetic journey to take you? I know that you have family and a strong family links to Rwanda, and have you been back there recently?
We have not been to Rwanda since before lockdown.
Wow.
Because, because of like, you know, we went the year before lockdown. We went like, you know, the year before COVID. But yeah, we would have liked to go back again, and we thought about it this year. We can't really afford it. It's expensive.
It's a long way away, isn't it, really?
It's just really expensive.
Is it?
Yeah, it is a long way. And, yeah.
So
They need injections and stuff. But I asked my mum if she wanted to come with us next time we went, and she said yeah. So next time we go, she'll come.
She's not been before you, Mum?
No.
So have you any idea where your
My
poetic
poetry journey
where you would like it to take you?
God, well, I'm all about Korea at the moment. I've got a massive obsession with everything Korean.
Yeah.
So like K-dramas, music. I'm very picky about K-pop. I like Korean rap music, and I like and I'm learning Korean as well, to the extent that actually my Korean class is going to be on Thursday night, so I'm not going to be able to make any local poetry nights for like a year.
Yeah.
Which is quite scary. I might have to create another poetry night just so I can go to one, actually. I've been seriously thinking about that. Yeah, and I've noticed there's a poetry residency in Korea for 8 weeks, and I don't know if it runs every year.
Could you leave the family for that?
Oh, God, that'd be amazing.
8 weeks is a long time.
I'll wait till Safi's like independent, maybe a couple of years' time when she goes off and does, you know, whatever job, uni, whatever she decides to do. Yeah, and and I'll drag my husband with me, who has no interest in career whatsoever.
Or poetry.
Or poetry, yeah. I don't think he likes kimchi much either.
Oh man.
We'll find something for him to do.
I'm working with Koreans at the minute, quite a few Koreans.
Really?
They're such
oh my
a good
God,
laugh.
you've got to put me in touch with them because I really need conversation.
I find it's a shared sort of humour to British humour.
Yeah.
Really similar.
Well, yeah.
Easy to laugh, the lads I'm working with.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll teach you some things to say before we go.
They're all sneaking off for a cigarette when they're meant to, which is good. I'm all for that. I'm not advocating bringing back smoking, but the idea of just going off and having your own headspace, I admire them for that. Yeah.
Did you mean like, I mean, I took that very literally and like thinking about travel because you mentioned Rwanda, but did you more mean like poetry goals? Or?
Yeah. The journey, well, I've no idea what I think I'm doing with my poetic life, but it's definitely introduces me to people.
Yeah.
That I wouldn't get out and meet normally.
Yeah. So there's two things at the moment that I'm really interested in. I'm really interested in working with a producer and writing stuff that's more spoken word rap type stuff, which sounds odd for like a 50-year-old white woman to say maybe, but I am, because I just love rap music and that's what I'm listening to, and I'd like to be able to sort of mix beats, and I think there's something about music, isn't there? Like musicality, I think it just reaches people more effectively than poetry does, and like by itself, like you say, you know, people are a bit afraid of poetry, and so I kind of want to experiment with that, and I really want to get like a full-length collection published. So I've had 3 pamphlets published with indie presses and one through a competition, and then I've got like a little one of like chatbot poems called Chatbot coming out in October with Hedgehog Press, and so that'll be fun. That's got artwork in it as well, because
your artwork,
because I paint too. But yeah, I still haven't got a full-length collection. And I've got one that I'm sending out, but like people want like 6 months to look at it sometimes. Yeah. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. That would be nice. I sometimes every now and again I just need people to tell me that something's good and I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm not one of these people that's entirely self-sufficient in that respect.
No.
Yeah.
It's tricky when you ever compliment a poet. I don't know if this bleeds through to all aspects of life. People will say, I really liked your second poem. And I really like that line in it where you said something about a tree and a rabbit and a flower, whatever. And every poet's then reaction, what? So you hated all the other stuff?
I knew you were going to say that. That's why I was laughing.
That's how it comes across. It's really hard to give a compliment to anyone.
No, I don't think that. I don't think you hated the other stuff. I'm just really grateful that you liked something, and that you were listening, so that you noticed.
Yeah.
Because, I think that's the worst worry for me, is not that people hate it, because I think a visceral reaction is not a bad thing in some cases, but that someone was completely indifferent, that would hurt more.
I read a poem to my non-poetry. They're poetic, the guys at work, in their own way, lots of them. Really interesting lads. And we have a little bit of we eat our food and then we probably have a little doze. And then this one lad who sits in the other room, he's a DJ, he comes in and we end up a bit of philosophy, you know. We'll talk about all sorts. And I read a poem that I'd written, and some of them were really into it, and one of them said, I really enjoyed that. It was a word that I didn't understand, but I really enjoyed it. And my friend sat next to me. I don't think he'd had enough sleep in his nap. He said, why do you read it like that? Why do you read it like that woman who's always on Six Music? I think he meant Kate Tempest. Why do you read? Why does all poetry have to be read in that? I said, it was just like measured breaths. That's how my poems come out.
There is a poetry voice, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can feel yourself. Sometimes I read something and I feel myself slipping into it, especially if, like previous poets that have read stuff in that voice, I kind of feel myself slipping into this weird poetry voice.
Yeah.
That's why I often, when I'm reading, I'll often stop myself and just read something completely in my normal voice, without bothering about measured breaths or rhythm or anything, and just to kind of reset myself so I don't make it like a kind of cliche dirge.
I'm going to try and read this one.
Yeah.
Without the poetry voice, in my normal accent.
Good luck, John.
It's
Fighting.
really tricky. It's inspired. We had a bit of travelling. We went to Greece a few weeks ago.
Nice.
And on the last night in Amorgos, I'd been chatting with the old Greek blokes around this table, and one of their daughters, and she said, my sister's husband. I'd asked about legends and stories, and they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, for example, the city where we're from has this legend of the Lady Godiva. Have you heard of They hadn't heard of Lady Godiva. Their daughter had, and I had to explain Lady Godiva, the legend of Lady Godiva, which is to have never heard that in the world. Anyway, they said, we do have a story like that here. And they tried to explain it, but it didn't come over very well. Yeah. And then the hotel owner, she said, "Oh, my sister's going to tell you about her husband, Adonis. His grandmother was a fairy, and they told me about this." So, and I ended up with a poem out of it.
Wow.
So I'm gonna read you about the sea fairy's child in my normal non-poetry voice. I'm going to do this. Eyes a cerulean alien hue, a cold yet a blaze of a gaze. Ariadne laid with Adonis, left him to father their union's blood. She felt the salt in her veins, needed the keen of a sea storm wind that drives the rolling waves. When desire called her name from the wild, she heeded her yearning, tempestuous demand, and abandoned her child to a sorrowful man, with good soil on his farm, with a fire in his hearth, and honest toiled earth in the nails on his hands.
It's a beautiful poem.
Thanks.
I like the poem a lot.
Yeah.
You
It's
went
true. It's true. So this guy,
Yeah.
she was telling me about this. She said,
Yeah.
my husband's dad brought him up, Adonis, because the grandmother, his mother, had she'd just left him with the kid, and she went, "There he is. There's Adonis." And Adonis came over,
Yeah.
and he had the bluest eyes I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
Never seen blue eyes like it, like an alien,
Yeah.
like the Greeks see.
Yeah.
And he was very dark as well, like a Greek guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he told me the story. It was amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Shall I read your poem? Shall I see if I can read your writing? Shall I read it?
Yeah.
And I'll just try and do it in a completely different way.
Go for it.
Because I find this really interesting. It's always interesting when people read poems that aren't theirs. Because I'll kind of perform it as a.
Avoid the voice.
But what I've noticed that people do when they're reading poems, they pay attention to the craft of the poetry. So they'll pay attention to the sounds of the words and the rhythm of the word. But they don't pay attention to the meaning of the words.
Yeah.
So I'll try and do that so it sounds a bit different. A sea fairy's child. Eyes a cerulean alien hue. A cool yet a blaze of a gaze. Ariadne laid with Adonis. Left him to father their union's blood. Felt the salt in her veins, need the keen of a sea storm wind that drives the rolling waves. When desire called her name from the wild, she heeded her yearning. Tempestuous demand abandoned her child to a sorrowful man. With good soil on his farm, with a fire in his hearth, and honest toiled earth in the nails on his hands.
You read that lovely. Yeah. That was glorious. Thanks for that.
Well, it's just different, isn't it? So it would be interesting to listen back because,
it will be interesting to listen to
I'm
that.
looking. I
with
kind
our,
of want to see
with our Bristolian Coventry accents combined.
Or was I just kidding myself and I read it exactly the same way you did? I don't know. But I just wanted to experiment.
That's great. I'll ask you another question, then we'll get you to read another piece from your own work. I've been reading about a lot and trying to write about liminal places, thin places where I feel closer to the universal truth. There are a few places nearby. I'll name a few. Temple Balsall, Coventry Cathedral, round the back of the Alhambra feels quite liminal to me. That where the old charnel house was that adjoined. There was an excavation years ago.
I don't know what you mean.
You know where the Coventry Cathedral is and the Trinity Church?
Yeah.
There's that garden between. And then towards the kind of where Sainsbury's is, if you know where Sainsbury's is in Coventry, there's a bit of a garden that's sort of sunken.
Yeah, Lady Herbert's garden.
Not Lady Herbert's gardens, no, the other side.
Oh.
Right, it's the gardens of essentially the cathedral. And then they're sort of sunken and they go towards where the Wimpy used to be.
Yeah.
That sunken bit there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's they found
where the gladiator's grave was.
Was it?
Yeah, we had a gladiator.
Wow.
Quite a recent gladiator, not a Roman gladiator,
yeah.
but still there was a gladiator's grave there, but they've moved it now, I think.
They found a charnel house in the 90s.
Did they?
There. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And and it was full of Saxons, pure Saxons.
Ooh.
And some big pharma biological research company wanted to get hold of the bones to use as a control group.
Oh, gosh.
Because they were racially quite Saxon,
Pure.
you know. Icelandics are used a lot, aren't they? Because of their...
I don't know.
Then they don't really breed. They're quite an isolated strain of stock. So they're great to use for drugs, I think. I might be winging this, but they're a good control group.
Yeah.
So anyway, they wanted these old bones, and the city fathers had to flex the Rubicon on this. Should they take the millions that were being offered, or should they respect the ancestors?
Yeah.
And I can't remember if they took the money or not. And I keep meaning to check.
Yeah.
This is in the 90s. They had this dilemma. So I've been reading about these places.
Yeah.
Coventry Cathedral, back of the Alhambra, Berkswell. Kim and I got married in Berkswell.
Oh.
Bubbenall and Brandon Marsh. A few, and then where the Avon comes around the back of Rugby into Coventry and
Yes.
around where we all live now. A few meanders as a kid where the Sherborne came from Berkswell sort of way and meandered between Wobley and Aldsley. And lots of rivers,
Yeah.
water, liminal places. And I was going to ask you, do you have any spatial connections with anywhere around and about where we live?
Yeah. So the whole of the full collection that I've written is called Treadmill, and so every morning, I go on the treadmill, and I open the back of the garage doors. So there's treadmills in the garage, and at the back where I open the doors, and there's like just a little alleyway, behind the houses.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really even drive down it; it's too thin now.
Yeah.
But there's a railway on one side. There's like a massive kind of, the railway is down. It's like cutting, and then we're on the top, and so there's like trees and stuff, and there's just like loads of grass, and it's like there's something about it being liminal, I think, because the railway's there, and the railway's like a river, and the railway is busy, and it's like it cuts through, the city in the same way a river cuts through a place. And then on the other side, there's like the houses and stuff, and there's kind of like the human space and life. So it's like this kind of little bit of wilderness. And so I see it every morning. Like I'll see it at the same time. So I watch the seasons change through it. Yeah. And so so I wrote like one long poem or a series of very short poems. I don't know what it is really, about thoughts that I had on the treadmill, but lots of it is just about this alleyway, this little space.
Wow. Because
there's something about it I really love, and I feel really connected to. So that's one place. And then another place is Coombe Abbey Country Park.
Yeah.
I just really love going to Coombe. My granddad worked at Coombe as a warden, like a ranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, for years actually. And he planted trees for like my grandma and my dad and stuff.
Coombe is, I've got fond memories of Coombe.
Yeah, and he talked to us about, like, he was there when the myxomatosis was a problem, and we had conversations about that and stuff when I was little. So yeah, there's really important to me, and I try and go there like every week during term time. I'll try and go to Coombe at least once.
I haven't been for ages.
So I know it really well.
I know it really well. It was our go-to place when we moved to Coventry from the northeast. I've got a great memory. Me and my dad and brother went there on a glorious, really frosty morning. Yeah. But the sun came up and just illuminated the whole thing to Narnia. It's glorious. Such a beautiful memory. And I nearly died in the lake there. I fell on a...
Did you?
In the 70s. We're walking, me, my sister, my brother-in-law, my brother, who are a lot older. They're 10 years older than me, roughly. And we're walking. I decided to climb out along a tree that had fallen in the lake. And I stood on a branch and it snapped, and I'd got flares on, and my flared trouser caught, and it just hung me upside down in the water.
Oh my God.
So I had that moment of, could be my obsession with death by water, that kind of grab a breath and then fall under again, and then bubbles and colour, and then one of the adults eventually pulled me out and disentangled me, but I would have died. But it's a lovely poetic memory, actually.
Yeah, I've nearly drowned twice. I nearly drowned in Wales twice. I used to go whitewater kayaking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned this in poems, I think. Yeah, but that's the other place, is like North Wales, a whole of Snowdonia.
Oh, it's
like,
reeks it's stiff with magic.
It is,
That whole area, the
absolutely,
Rhinogs
yeah.
and
Yeah, love it there. So yeah, that's somewhere we go every year. Without fail, we go to North Wales.
yeah. I've not been for a while, but I love it.
Yeah,
I'm close to it now. We're at Nantwich. It's really just over the way.
I do like wild places. Really, I mean, I'm trying to think now. Like the cathedral is really special, but yeah, places with people, places that hold memories.
Well, the cathedral does that for me because I've got strong memories of being a little boy
Yeah,
at Christmas with my mum, who was spiritual, I'd say, relapsed Catholic, but we'd go together, and she's no longer with us. So I've got a real shared strong memory. But it is such a beautiful building, that window's. I could stare at that big window.
Where do you dream about? Because like we've lived so I was brought up in one house, like the family sort of house, and then I lived lots of places, and then like with me and my family, my husband and my daughter, we lived in Hillfields for a while, and then we moved to live in Charlesmore, where we live now. But in my dreams, I'm always in the house that I grew up in as a child, and I very rarely dream about the other houses. I've maybe once or twice, but very rarely. Like if I dream it will be of a house, it will be that house.
Yeah.
And if I dream of and I often dream of beaches and fossil hunting, you know what I'm saying? And I've had dreams in this particular headland that I don't think I've ever visited, but I've dreamt about this place multiple times.
Do you know where it is?
I've no idea if it even exists. But that's kind of interesting, isn't it? What where your imagination lives.
My dreams are usually, if they're adult, it's in the first adult house I owned.
Yeah.
I didn't own it, it was rented it in Tole Hill.
Yeah.
They're often there. And the other peculiar thing about all of my dreams, if there's a room or a building, it's always in the other hand to it, how it actually is.
Oh, backwards.
It's, the backwards, what did they call that? And the upside down.
A mirror world.
In the upside down.
Oh, in the upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I usually am in...
Yeah.
I've slipped through the liminal.
Yeah.
And I'm in an elsewhere.
Gosh, that's interesting.
Or that's just how my brain recollects and, like the other side of the lens or something. Maybe my mind's eye.
Well, I had an experience about things being backwards every time I blinked, but
Woof.
that was more to do with
My friend's got...
that was yeah.
My friend's got she's got a lovely old dog, which I'm allergic to. Or was, he's dead now. And he had this terrible condition where he thought everything was upside down. So he was always trying to turn his head upside down to make everything in order.
Oh.
I really felt for the poor old fella.
That's hard, isn't it? It's like those people who have hiccups for years.
That'd be worse, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be dreadful.
Yeah. Dreaming places. Places is really strange, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I think when I dream, and I'm quite a big dreamer, they're more... the places are a little bit amorphous. I mean, we go to some lovely places, and I do travel quite a lot, even around this country, this island. Went to Ireland last year. You've been with the Poetry.
Yeah.
Did you go to the Stone Circle at Drumbeg?
We went to a Stone Circle.
It's probably the same one, and that felt really liminal. Yeah. It was a really small, tight stone circle with a altar stone by the sea. It's probably the same, I would have thought.
I don't know. No, maybe I think they went to a different one.
I drew it anyway. I painted it.
Yeah.
Painted it as I felt it, not
They've
how I
got
saw
a lot
it.
of stone circles there.
Yeah. They've got loads, haven't they?
Oh yeah, spooky places. You know Gibbet Hill?
Yeah.
The woods there.
Yeah.
Find them really spooky. They'll be all right and then something will change and they'll just turn and the whole wood feels like you're in the Blair Witch Project or something.
Wow. Did I tell you that, I was helping the gravedigger out for this last winter. I've buried quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was really wet. But I started off
Not
this time last year, epically grounding, for want of a better word. But I started off last autumn. I had to sort somebody out who died. And it was a really deep one because his wife's going to go on top. and I won't say where it is because it's tricky, but it was a really hot day, and I just had to prepare it. And when it's a bit deeper for 2 people, it's a lot of soil on the ground, and that can make the grave collapse because of all the weight. So he said, "Oh, you're going to have to get in there and tidy it all up."
Oh, God, that's really scary.
So I had to go down. He's left a little ladder for me to get in,
gosh.
and I'm on my own.
I don't think I want to hear the story.
Do you not want to?
No, all right, carry on.
So it's really hot. I've taken 2 litres of water. I've got me exploring sandals on, my shorts. And sure enough, he was right. It had crumbled a little bit. So I had to get in, and I was shoveling away. And anyway, there was already somebody there.
No.
Yeah. And I had to sort of tidy him up. And I
no.
phoned up the digger and said,
Oh, gosh.
there's somebody already. He said, yeah, but it's probably 100 years ago or so. And it wasn't like it was just some bones. It was it was a skeleton.
It's all right then.
Anyway, I had to make it all good.
Yeah.
And then the guy got buried, and then at some point, and then I had to backfill it all. I got fully red hot, really hot day. Like, rosy cheeks, salty flanks, everything. And but that night I dreamt, and as I was dreaming, there was a character just looking at me in my dream.
Oh.
And I stopped in my dream and looked at this guy, thinking, "Who are you?" He was just looking at me, not with any hostility, with just a kind of just checking out who it was.
Yeah.
And I
it's that guy.
I think it was the guy that I disturbed a little bit.
I just like the hairs on my arms just stood on end. What a great story.
No, just like, what were you doing standing on my rib cage earlier on in the...
Wow.
Yeah. So that was definitely liminal, but where that was, and I'm not going to say where it was, but I got absolutely cold, but really interesting stories about all the people. I had to bury somebody on it's the the solstice, winter solstice.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So it's starting to get dark about 3:30.
Yeah.
All the family lingered a little bit, and they left. And I was starting to fill the grave, and it was getting dark, And I was with this person, this deceased person, and it's kind of an intimate thing to do for someone.
It is really intimate, yeah.
But I liked it, and I felt I was doing a respectful job and a valid job. Of all the jobs I've ever done, I can't imagine a more valid thing to do than to actually bury someone. It felt good. Anyway, that's me rabbiting on about me.
Oh, that was interesting.
Have we got any plugs? I've got a couple of plugs. There's one for this Irish gig, which is on Friday, the 1st of November, in the Ulston Carnegie Library. And we've got two. I've got Cedric. I can't remember Cedric and Catherine. They're the 2 Cork poets that are coming over from Cork as part of the Coventry Exchange. And then we've got a PGR on the 3rd. I've got my diary, but it's the 3rd Thursday of, where are we? September. We've got Ash Dickinson, who's a really lovely guy, lovely poet. Have you got anything to plug? You haven't, or have you?
We've already plugged.
We plugged the one with the anthology.
I don't know if I'll end up doing something for this little poetry thing. I'll get published, maybe, but I've not organised anything yet.
Yeah. All right, we're going to
wrap up.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll see how it turns out.
That.
I'll send you the link when it comes.
Thank you.
Cheers, Andrea.
Cool. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye. Bye all.
Bye.